And we're going to continue to read in the first Maccabees. And today we will be reading chapter 11 through chapter 15. The king of Egypt then assembled an army as numerous as the sands of the seashore, with many ships, and set out to take possession of Alexander's kingdom by a ruse and add it to his own kingdom. He set off for Syria with protestations of peace. And the people of the towns opened their gates to him and came out to meet him, since King Alexander's orders were to welcome him. Ptolemy, being his father-in-law, on entering the towns, however, Ptolemy quarantined troops as a garrison in each one. When he reached Azotus, he was shown the burnt-out temple of Dagon, with Azotus and its suburbs in ruins, corpses scattered here and there, and the charred remains of those whom Jonathan had burnt to death in the battle, piled into heaps along his route. They explained to the king what Jonathan had done, hoping for his disapproval. But the king said nothing. Jonathan went in state to meet the king at Joppa, where they greeted each other and spent the night. Jonathan accompanied the king as far as the river called Eleutherus, and then returned to Jerusalem. King Ptolemy, for his part, occupied the coastal towns as far as Seleucia on the coast, all the while maturing his wicked designs against Alexander. He sent envoys to King Demetrius to say, "Come and let us make a treaty. I shall give you my daughter, whom Alexander now has, and you shall rule your father's kingdom. I regret having given my daughter to that man, since he has tried to kill me. He made this accusation because he coveted his kingdom. Having carried off his daughter and bestowed her on Demetrius, he broke with Alexander, and their enmity became open. Ptolemy next entered Antioch and assumed the crown of Asia. He now wore on his head the two crowns of Egypt and Asia. King Alexander was in Cilicia at the time, since the people of those parts had risen in revolt. But when he heard the news, he advanced on his rival to give battle. While Ptolemy, for his part, also took the field, met him with a strong force and routed him, Alexander fled to Arabia for refuge, and King Ptolemy resigned supreme. Zabdiel, the Arab, cut off Alexander's head and sent it to Ptolemy. 3 days later, King Ptolemy died, and the Egyptian garrisons in the strongholds were killed by the local inhabitants. So Demetrius became king in the year 167. At the same time, Jonathan mustered the men of Judea for an assault on the citadel of Jerusalem, and they set up numerous siege engines against it. But some renegades who hated their nation made their way to the king and told him that Jonathan was besieging the citadel. The king was angered by the news. No sooner had he been informed that he set out and came to Ptolemais. He wrote to Jonathan, telling him to raise the siege and to meet him for a conference in Ptolemais as soon as possible. When Jonathan heard this, he gave orders for the siege to continue. He then selected a deputation from the elders of Israel and the priests, and took the deliberate risk of himself taking silver and gold, clothing, and numerous other presents, and going to Ptolemais to face the king, whose favor he succeeded in winning. And although one or two renegades of his nation brought charges against him, the king treated him as the predecessors had treated him, and promoted him in the presence of all his friends. He confirmed him in the high priesthood and whatever other distinctions he already held, and had him ranked among the first friends. Jonathan asked the king to exempt Judea and the 3 Samaritan districts from taxation, promising him 300 talents in return. The king consented, and wrote Jonathan a rescript covering the whole matter in these terms. So this is a new charter favoring the Jews. King Demetrius to Jonathan, his brother, and to the Jewish nation, greeting. We have all written to Lasthenes, our cousin, concerning you, and now send you this copy of our rescript for your own information. King Demetrius to his father Lasthenes, greetings. The nation of the Jews is our ally. They fulfill their obligation to us, and in view of their goodwill toward us, we have decided to show them our bounty. We confirm them in their possession of the territory of Judea and the 3 districts of Amphiramah, Lydia, and Ramathaim. These were annexed to Judea from Samaritan territory, with all their dependencies, in favor of all who offer sacrifice in Jerusalem, instead of the royal dues which the king formerly received from them every year, from the yield of the soil and the fruit crops. As regards our other rights over the tithes and taxes due to us, over the salt marshes and the crown taxes due to us, as from today we release them from them all. None of these grants will be revoked henceforth or anywhere. You will make yourself responsible for having a copy of this made, to be given to Jonathan and displayed on the holy mountain in a conspicuous place. When King Demetrius saw that the country was at peace under his rule and that no resistance was offered him, he dismissed his forces and sent all the men home, except for the foreign troops that he had recruited in the foreign island, thus incurring the enmity of the veterans who had served his ancestors. Now Trypho, one of Alexander's former supporters, noting that all the troops were muttering against Demetrius, went to see Iamblichus, the Arab, who was bringing up Antiochus, Alexander's young son, and repeatedly urged him to let him have the boy, so that he might succeed his father as king. He told him of Demetrius' decision and of the resentment it had aroused among his troops. He spent a long time there. Jonathan, meanwhile, sent to ask King Demetrius to withdraw the garrisons from the citadel in Jerusalem and from the other fortresses, since they were constantly fighting Israel. Demetrius sent word back to Jonathan, "Not only will I do this for you and for your nation, but I shall heap honors on you and your nation if I find a favorable opportunity. For the present, you would do well to send me reinforcements, since all my troops have deserted." Jonathan sent 3,000 experienced soldiers to him in Antioch. When they reached the king, he was delighted at their arrival. The citizens crowded together in the center of the city, to the number of some 120,000, intending to kill the king. The king took refuge in the palace, while the citizens occupied the thoroughfares of the city and began to attack. The king then called on the Jews for help, and these all rallied around him, then fanned out through the city, and that day killed about 100,000 of its inhabitants. They fired the city, seizing a great deal of plunder at the same time, and secured the king's safety. When the citizens saw that the Jews had the city at their mercy, their courage failed them, and they made an abject appeal to the king. "Give us the right hand of peace, and let the Jews stop their fight against us and the city." They threw down their arms and made peace. The Jews were covered in glory in the eyes of the king and of everyone else in his kingdom. Having won renown in his kingdom, they returned to Jerusalem laden with booty. Thus King Demetrius sat all the more securely on his royal throne, and the country was quite under his government. But he gave the lie to all the promises he had made. and changes his attitude to Jonathan, giving nothing in return for the services Jonathan had rendered him, but thwarting him at every turn. After this, Trypho came back with the little boy Antiochus, who became king and was crowned. All the troops that Demetrius had summarily dismissed rallied to Antiochus and made war on Demetrius, who turned tail and fled. Trypho captured the elephants and seized Antioch. Young Antiochus then wrote as follows to Jonathan: I confirm you in the high priesthood, and set you over the 4 districts, and appoint you one of the friends of the king. He sent him a service of gold plate, and granted him the right to drink from gold vessels, and to wear the purple and the golden brooch. He appointed his brother Simon commander-in-chief of the region from the ladder of Tyre to the frontiers of Egypt. Jonathan then set out and made a progress through Trans-Euphrates and its towns, and the entire Syrian army rallied to his support. He came to Ascalon and was received in the state by the inhabitants. From there he proceeded to Gaza, but the people of Gaza shut him out. So he laid siege to it, burning down its suburbs and plundering them. The people of Gaza then pleaded with Jonathan, and he made peace with them. But he took the sons of their chief men as hostages and sent them away to Jerusalem. He then traveled through the country as far as Damascus. Jonathan now learned that Demetrius's generals had arrived at Kadesh in Galilee with a large army, intending to remove him from office, and went to engage them, leaving his brothers Simon inside the country. Simon laid siege to Beth-zur, attacking it day after day, and blockading the inhabitants till they sued for peace, which he granted them, though he expelled them from the town and occupied it, stationing a garrison there. Jonathan and his army, meanwhile, having pitched camp by the lake of Gennesaret, rose early, and by morning were already in the plain of Hazor. The foreigners' army advanced to fight them on the plain, having first positioned an ambush for him in the mountains, while the main body was advancing directly toward the Jews. The troops in ambush broke cover and attacked first. All the men with Jonathan fled. No one was left except Mattathias, son of Absalom, and Judas, son of Shalaphi, the generals of his army. At this Jonathan tore his garments, put dust on his head, and prayed. Then he returned to the fight and routed the enemy, who fled. When the fugitives from his own forces saw this, they came back to him and joined in the pursuit as far as Kadesh, where the enemy encampment was. And there they themselves pitched camp. About 3,000 of the foreign troops fell that day. Jonathan then returned to Jerusalem. Chapter 12. This is Jonathan's relations with Rome and Sparta. When Jonathan saw that circumstances were working in his favor, he sent a select mission to Rome to confirm and renew his treaty of friendship with the Romans. He also sent letters to the same effect to the Spartans and to other places. The envoys made their way to Rome, entered the Senate, and said, Jonathan, the high priest, and the Jewish nation have sent us to renew your treaty of friendship and alliance with them as before. The Senate gave them letters to the authorities of each place to procure their safe conduct to Judea. The following is the copy of the letter Jonathan wrote to the Spartans. Jonathan, the high priest, the Senate of the nation, the priest, and the rest of the Jewish people, to the Spartans, their brothers, greetings. In the past, a letter was sent to Onias, the high priest, from Aroas, one of your kings, stating that you are indeed our brothers, as the copy subjoined attest. Onias received the envoy with honor and accepted the letter in which a clear declaration was made of friendship and alliance. For our part, though we have no need of these, having the consolation of the holy books in our possession, we venture to send to renew our fraternal friendship with you, so that we may not become strangers to you. A long time having elapsed since you wrote to us, we, for our part, on every occasion, at our festivals and on the other appointed days, unfailing remember you in the sacrifices we offer and in our prayers, as it is right and fitting to remember, brothers. We rejoice in your renown. We ourselves, however, have had many trials and many wars, the neighboring kings making war on us. We were unwilling to trouble you or our other allies and friends during these wars, since we have the support of heaven to help us, thanks to which we have been delivered from our enemies, and they are the ones who have been brought low. We have therefore chosen Numanus, son of Antiochus, and Antipater, son of Jason, and sent them to the Romans to renew our former treaty of friendship and alliance. And we have ordered them also to visit you, to greet you, and deliver you this letter of ours concerning the renewal of our brotherhood. We shall be grateful for an answer to it. The following is the copy of the letter sent to Onias. Arius, king of the Spartans, to Onias, the high priest, greetings. It has been discovered in records regarding the Spartans and Jews that they are brothers and of the race of Abraham. Now that this has come to our knowledge, we shall be obliged if you will send us news of your welfare. Our own message to you is this: your flocks and your possessions are ours, and ours are yours, and we are instructing our envoys to give you a message to this effect. Jonathan learned that Demetrius's generals had returned with a larger army than before to make war on him. He therefore left Jerusalem and went to engage them in the area of Hamath, not giving them the time to invade his own territory. He sent spies into their camp, who told him on their return that the enemy were taking up positions for a night attack on the Jews. At sunset, Jonathan offered his men to keep watch with their weapons at hand, in readiness to fight at any time during the night, and posted advance guards all around the camp. On learning that Jonathan and his men were ready to fight, the enemy took fright, and, with quaking hearts, lit fires in their bivouac and decamped. Jonathan and his men, watching the glows of the fires, were unaware of their withdrawal until morning. And although Jonathan pursued them, he failed to overtake them, for they had already crossed the river Eleutheris. So Jonathan wheeled round on the Arabs called Zabadeans, beat them, and plundered them. Then, breaking camp, he went to Damascus, thus crossing the whole province. Simon, meanwhile, had also set out and had penetrated as far as Ascalon and the neighboring towns. He then turned on Joppa and moved quickly to occupy it, for he had heard of their intention to hand over this strong point to the supporters of Demetrius. He stationed a garrison there to hold it. Jonathan, on his return, called a meeting of the elders of the people and decided with them to build fortresses in Judea and to heighten the walls of Jerusalem and erect a high barrier between the citadel and the city, to cut the former off from the city and isolate it, to prevent the occupants from buying or selling. Rebuilding the city was a cooperative effect. Part of the wall over the eastern ravine had fallen down. He restored the quarter called Chaphanatha, or Chaphanatha. Simon, meanwhile, rebuilt Adada in the lowlands, fortifying it and erecting gates with bolts. Trypho's ambition was to become king of Assyria or Asia, assume the crown, and overpower King Antiochus. He was apprehensive that Jonathan might not allow him to do this, and might even make war on him. So he set out and came to Bethshean in the hopes of finding some pretext for having him arrested and put to death. Jonathan went out to intercept him with 40,000 picked men in battle order, and arrived at Bethshean. When Trypho saw him there with a large force, he hesitated to make any more or move against him. He even received him with honor, commended him to all his friends, gave him presents, and ordered his friends and his troops to obey him as they would himself. He said to Jonathan, "Why have you given all these people so much trouble, when there is no threat of war between us? Send them back home. Pick yourself a few men as your bodyguard, and come with me to Ptolemy, which I am going to hand over to you, with the other fortresses and remaining troops, and all the officials, after which I shall take the road for home." This was my purpose in coming here. Jonathan trusted him and did as he said. He dismissed his forces, who went back to Judea. With him he retained 3,000 men, of whom he left 2,000 in Galilee, while 1,000 accompanied him. But as soon as Jonathan had entered Ptolemy, the people of Ptolemy closed the gates, seized him, and put all those who had entered with him to the sword. Trypho sent troops and cavalry into Galilee and the Great Plain to destroy all Jonathan's supporters. These, concluding that he had been taken and had perished with his companions, encouraged one another, marching with closed ranks and ready to give battle. And when their pursuers saw that they would fight for their lives, they turned back. All reached Judea safe and sound, and there they lamented Jonathan and his companions. Being very frightened indeed, all Israel was plunged into mourning. The surrounding nations were all now looking for ways of destroying them. They had no leader, they said no ally. We have only to attack them now, and we shall blot out their very memory from all peoples. Chapter 13. Simon heard that Trypho had collected a large army to invade and devastate Judea. And when he saw how the people were quaking with fear, he went up to Jerusalem, called the people together, and exhorted them thus: "You know yourselves how much I and my brothers and my father's family have done for the laws and the sanctuary. You know what wars and hardships we have experienced. That is why my brothers are all dead, for Israel's sake, and I am the only one left. Far be it from me then to be sparing of my own life in any time of oppression, for I am not worth more than my brothers. Rather will I avenge my nation and the sanctuary and your wives and children, now that the foreigners are all united in malice to destroy us." The people's spirit rekindled as they listened to his words, and they shouted back at him, "You are our leader in place of Judas and your brother Jonathan. Fight our battles for us, and we will do whatever you tell us." So he assembled all the fighting men and hurried on with completing the walls of Jerusalem, fortifying the whole perimeter. He sent a considerable force to Joppa under Jonathan, son of Absalom, who drove out the inhabitants and remained there in occupation. Trypho now left Ptolemy with a large army to invade Judea, taking Jonathan with him under guard. Simon pitched camp in Adada, facing the plain. When Trypho learned that Simon had taken the place of his brother Jonathan, and that he intended to join battle with him, he sent envoys to him with this message: "Your brother Jonathan was in debt to the royal exchequer for the offices he held. That is why we are detaining him. If you send 100 talents of silver and 2 of his sons as hostages, to make sure that On his release, he does not revolt against us. We shall release him." Although Simon was aware that the message was a ruse, he sent for the money and the boys for fear of incurring great hostility from the people, who would have said that Jonathan had died because Simon would not send Trypho the money and the children. He therefore sent both the boys and the 100 talents. But Trypho broke his word and did not release Jonathan. Next, Trypho set up about the invasion and devastation of the country. He made a detour along the Adora Road. I wasn't saying it right. Adora Road. But Simon and his army confronted him wherever he attempted to go. The men in the citadel kept sending messengers to Trypho, urging him to get through to them by way of the desert and send them supplies. Trypho organized his entire cavalry to go. But that night it snowed so heavily that he could not get through for the snow. So he left there and moved off into Gilead. And as he approached Bascama, he killed Jonathan, who was buried there. Trypho turned back and regained his own country. Simon sent and recovered the bones of his brother Jonathan and buried him in Modian, the town of his ancestors. All Israel kept solemn mourning for him and long bewailed him. Over the tomb of his father and brothers, Simon raised a monument high enough to catch the eye. Using dressed stone back in front, he erected 7 pyramids facing each other for his father and mother and his 4 brothers, surrounding them with a structure consisting of tall columns surmounted by trophies of arms to their everlasting memory, and beside the trophies of arms, ships sculpted on a scale to be seen by all who sail the sea. Such was the monument he constructed at Modian, and it is still there today. Now Trypho, betraying the trust of young King Antiochus, put him to death. He usurped his throne, assuming the crown of Asia, and brought great havoc on the country. Simon built up the fortresses of Judea, surrounding them with high towers, great walls and gates with bolts, and stocked these fortresses with food. He also sent a delegation to King Demetrius to get him to grant the province a remission, since all Trypho did was to despoil. King Demetrius replied to his request in a letter framed as follows: King Demetrius to Simon, high priest and friends of kings, and to the elders and nation of the Jews, greetings. It has pleased us to accept the golden crown and the palm you have sent us, and we are disposed to make a general peace with you, and to write to the officials to grant you remissions. Everything that we have decreed concerning you remains in force, and the fortresses you have built may remain in your hands. We pardon all offenses, unwitting or intentional, hitherto committed, and remit the crown tax you now owe us, and whatever other taxes were levied in Jerusalem are no longer to be levied. If any of you are suitable for enrollment in our bodyguard, let them be enrolled, and let there be peace between us. The Gentile yoke was thus lifted from Israel in the year 170, when our people began engrossing their documents and contracts. In the first year of Simon, eminent high priest, commander-in-chief, and ethnarch of the Jews. About that time, Simon laid siege to Gezer, surrounding it with his troops. He constructed a mobile tower, brought it up to the city, opened a breach in one of the bastions, and took it. The men in the mobile tower sprang out into the city, where great confusion ensued. The citizens, accompanied by their wives and children, mounted the ramparts with their garments torn, and loudly implored Simon to make peace with them. Treat us, they said, not as our wickedness deserves, but as your mercy prompts you." Simon came to terms with them and stopped the fighting, but he expelled them from the city, purified the house which contained idols, and then made his entry with songs of praise. He banished all impurity from it, settled in it people who observed the law, and having fortified it, built a residence there for himself. The occupants of the citadel in Jerusalem, prevented as they were from coming out and going into the countryside to buy and sell, were in desperate need of food, and numbers of them were being carried off by starvation. They begged Simon to make peace with them, and he granted this, though he expelled them and purified the citadel from its pollutions. The Jews made their entry on the 23rd day of the second month in the year 171, with acclamations and carrying psalms, to the sounds of lyres, cymbals, and harps, chanting hymns and canticles, since a great enemy had been crushed and thrown out of Israel. Simon made it a day of annual rejoicing. He fortified the temple hill on the citadel side, and took up residence there with his men. Since his son John had come to manhood, Simon appointed him general-in-chief, with his residence in Gezer. Chapter 14. In the year 172, King Demetrius assembled his forces and marched into Media to raise help for the fight against Trypho. When Arsaces, we're going to say Arsaces, king of Persia and Media, heard that Demetrius had entered his territory, he sent one of his generals to capture him alive. The general defeated the army of Demetrius, seized him, and brought him to Arsaces, who imprisoned him. The country was at peace throughout the days of Simon. He sought the good of his nation, and they were well pleased with his authority, as with his magnificence throughout his life. To crown his titles to glory, he took Joppa and made it a harbor, gaining access to the Mediterranean isles. He enlarged the frontiers of his nation, keeping his mastery over the homeland, resettling a host of captives. He conquered Gezer, Beth-zur, and the citadel, ridding them of every impurity, and no one could resist him. The people farmed their land in peace. The land gave its produce, the trees of the plain their fruit. The elders sat at ease in the squares. All their talk was of their prosperity. The young men wore splendid armor. He kept the towns supplied with provisions and furnished with fortifications, until his fame resounded to the ends of the earth. He established peace in the land, and Israel knew great joy. Each man sat under his own vine and his own fig tree, and there was no one to make them afraid. No enemy was left in the land to fight them. The very kings of those times had been crushed. He encouraged the afflicted members of his people, suppressing every wicked man and renegade. He strove to observe the law, and gave new splendor to the temple, enriching it with many sacred vessels. When it became known in Rome, as far as Sparta, that Jonathan was dead, people were deeply grieved. But as soon as they heard that his brother Simon had succeeded him as high priest and was master of the country and the cities in it, they wrote to him on bronze tablets to renew the treaty of friendship, an alliance which they had made with his brothers, Judas and Jonathan, and the document was read out before the assembly in Jerusalem. This is the copy of the letter sent by the Spartans. The rulers and the city of Sparta, to Simon the high priest, and to the elders and priests, and the rest of the people of the Jews, greetings. The ambassadors whom you sent to our people have informed us of your glory and prosperity, and we are delighted with their visit. We have recorded their declarations in the minutes of our public assemblies as follows: Numeneus, son of Antiochus, and Antipater, son of Jason, ambassadors of the Jews, came to us to renew their friendship with us, and it was the people's pleasure to receive these personages with honor, and to deposit a copy of their statements in the public archives, so that the people of Sparta might preserve a record of them. A copy was also made for Simon the high priest. After this, Simon sent Numeneus to Rome as the bearer of a large golden shield weighing 1,000 mina, to confirm the alliance with them. When these events were reported to our people, they said, "What mark of appreciation shall we give to Simon and his sons?" He stood firm, he and his brothers and his father's house. He fought off the enemies of Israel and secured its freedom. So they recorded as inscription on bronze tablets and set up on pillars on Mount Zion. This a copy of the text. The 18th of Elul, in the year 172, being the 3rd year of Simon, eminent high priest, in Asaramael, in the grand assembly of priests and people, of princes of the nation, and of elders of the country, we are acquainted with the matters following. When there was almost incessant fighting in the country, Simon, son of Mattathias, a priest of the line of Jorib, and his brothers courted danger and withstood their nation's enemies to safeguard the integrity of their sanctuary and of the law, and so brought their nation great glory. For when Jonathan, having rallied his nation and become its high priest, and having them been gathered to his ancestors, the enemy planned to invade the country, intending to devastate their territory and to lay hands on their sanctuary. Simon next came forward to fight for his nation, spending much of his personal wealth on arming his nation's fighting men and on providing their pay, fortifying the towns of Judea as well as Beth Zur on the Judean frontier, where the enemy arsenal had formerly been, and stationing in it a garrison of Jewish soldiers, fortifying Joppa on the coast, and Gezer on the borders of Azotus, a place formerly inhabited by the enemy, founding a Jewish colony there, and providing the settlers with everything they needed to set them on their feet. In consequence of which, the people, aware of Simon's loyalty and of the glory which he was determined to win for his nation, have made him their ethnarch and high priest, for all his services and for the integrity and loyalty which he has shown towards his nation, and for having by every means sought to enhance his people's power. It has fallen to him in his time to expel the foreigners from his country, including those in the city of David in Jerusalem, who had converted it into a citadel for their own use, from which they would sally out to defile the surroundings of the sanctuary and to violate its sacred character, to station Jewish soldiers there instead for the security of the country and the city, and to heighten the walls of Jerusalem. And since King Demetrius had heard that the Romans called the Jews their friends, allies, and brothers, and that they had given an honorable reception to Simon's ambassadors, and furthermore, that the Jews and the priests are happy that Simon should, pending the advent of a genuine prophet, but their ethnarch and high priest for life, therefore he has confirmed him in the priestly office, has raised him to the rank of friend, and has showered great honors on him, also confirming him as the commander-in-chief, with the right to appoint officials to oversee the fabric of the sanctuary and to administer the country. Munitions and fortresses. He is to have personal charge of the sanctuary and to be obeyed by all. All official documents in the country must be drawn up in his name, and he may assume the purple and may wear golden ornaments. Furthermore, it is against the law for any member of the public or the priesthood to contravene any of these enactments or to contest his decisions or to convene a meeting anywhere in the country without his permission, or to assume the purple of wear the golden brooch. And anyone acting contrary to or rejecting any article of these enactments is liable to punishment. And since the people have unanimously agreed to grant Simon the right to act as aforesaid, and since Simon, for his part, has given his assent, and has consented to assume the high priestly office, and to be commander-in-chief and ethnarch of the Jews and their priest, and to preside over all, so be it now enacted that this record be inscribed on bronze tablets, and be erected at some conspicuous place within the precincts of the temple, and that the copies be deposited in the treasury for Simon and his descendants. Chapter 15 of the first book of Maccabees. Antiochus, son of King Demetrius, addressed a letter from the Mediterranean Isles to Simon, priest and ethnarch of the Jews, and the whole nation. This was how it read. King Antiochus, to Simon, the high priest and ethnarch, and to the Jewish nation, greetings. Whereas certain scoundrels have seized control of the kingdom of our fathers, and I propose to claim back the kingdom so that I may reestablish it as it was before. And whereas I have accordingly recruited very large forces and fitted out warships, intending to make a landing in the country and to hunt down the men who have ruined it and laid waste many towns in my kingdom, I now, therefore, confirm in your favor all remissions of taxes granted to you by the kings, my predecessors, as well as the waiving of whatever presents they may have conceded. I hereby authorize you to mint your own coinage as legal tender for your own country. I declare Jerusalem and the sanctuary to be free. All the arms you have manufactured and the fortresses you have built and now occupy may remain yours. All debts to the royal treasury, present or future, are canceled henceforth in perpetuity. Furthermore, when we have won back our kingdom, we shall bestow such great honor on yourself, your nation, and the sanctuary as will make your glory known throughout the world. Antiochus invaded the land of his ancestors in the year 174, and since the troops all rallied to him, Trypho was left with few supporters. Antiochus pursued the usurper, who took revenge in Dora on the coast, knowing that misfortunes were piling up on him, and that his troops had deserted him. Antiochus pitched camp outside Dora with 120,000 fighting men and 8,000 cavalry. He laid siege to the city while the ships closed in from the sea, so that he had the city under attack from land and sea, and allowed no one to go in or come out. Numaeus and his companions, meanwhile, arrived at Rome, or from Rome, bringing letters addressed to various kings and states in the following terms. Lucius, consul of the Romans, to King Ptolemy, greetings. The Jewish ambassadors have come to us as our friends and allies to renew our original friendship and alliance in the name of the high priest Simon and the Jewish people. They have brought a golden shield worth 1,000 mina. Accordingly, we have seen fit to write to various kings and states, warning them neither to molest the Jewish people nor to attack either them or their towns or their country, nor to ally themselves with any such aggressors. We have seen fit to accept the shield from them. If therefore any scoundrels have fled their country to take refuge with you, hand them over to Simon the high priest, to be punished by him according to the law, or to their law. The consul sent the same letter to King Demetrius, to Attalus, Arethes, and Arsaces, and to all the states, including Sampsames, the Spartans, Delos, Mendos, Sison, Korea, not Korea, but Caria, Samos, Pamphylia, Lycia, Halicarnassus, Rhodes, Phasaelis, Cos, Side, Abydos, Gortine, Cyprus, and Cyrene. They also drew up a copy for Simon the high priest. Antiochus, meanwhile, from his positions on the outskirts of Dora, was continually throwing detachments against the town. He constructed siege engines and blockaded Trypho, preventing movement in or out. Simon sent him 2,000 picked men to support him in the fight, with silver and gold and plenty of equipment, but Antiochus would not accept them. Instead, he repudiated all his previous agreements with Simon and completely changed his attitude to him. He sent him Antiochus, one of his friends, to confer with him and say, "You are now occupying Joppa and Gezer and the citadel in Jerusalem, which are towns in my kingdom. You have laid waste their territory and done immense harm to the country, and you have seized control of many places properly in my kingdom. Either now surrender the towns you have taken and the taxes from the places you have seized outside the frontiers of Judea, or else pay me 500 talents of silver in compensation for them and for the destruction you have done, and another 500 talents for the taxes from the towns. Otherwise we shall come and make war on you." When the king's friend Antiochus reached Jerusalem and saw Simon's magnificence, his cabinet of gold and silver plate, and the state he kept, he was dumbfounded. He delivered the king's message, but Simon gave him this answer: "We have not taken foreign territory or any alien property, but have occupied our ancestral heritage. For some time unjustly wrested from us by our enemies. Now that we have a favorable opportunity, we are merely recovering our ancestral heritage. As regards Joppa and Gezer, which you claim, these were towns that did great harm to our people and laid waste our country. We are prepared to give 100 talents for them," without so much as a word in answer. The envoy went back to the king in a rage and reported on Simon's answer and his magnificence, and on everything he had seen, at which the king fell into a fury. Trypho now boarded a ship and escaped to Orthosia. The king appointed Candabeus, military governor of the coastal region, and allotted him a force of infantry and cavalry. He ordered him to deploy his men facing Judea and instructed him to rebuild Kedron and fortify its gates, and to make war on our people, while the king himself went in pursuit of Trypho. Candabeus arrived at Jamnia and began to provoke our people forthwith, invading Judea, taking prisoners and massacring. Having rebuilt Kedron, he stationed cavalry and troops there to make sorties and patrol the roads of Judea. as the king had ordered. Thank you for listening today. We will be back within a few days to pick up chapter 16 through 20. Or actually, let's go ahead and finish chapter 16, because then we will be going into the second book of Maccabees. So I'm going to continue right now with finishing up the first book. Chapter 16. John then went up from Gezer and reported to his father Simon what Sindabeus was busy doing. At this, Simon summoned his two elder sons, Judas and John, and said to them, "My brothers and I, and my father's house, have fought the enemies of Israel from our youth until today, and many a time we have been successful in rescuing Israel. But now I am an old man, while you, by the mercy of heaven, are the right age. Take the place of my brother and myself. Go out and fight for our nation, and may heaven's aid be with you." He then selected 20,000 of the country's fighting men and cavalry, and these marched against Sindabeus, spending the night at Modian. Making an early start, they marched into the plain to find a large army opposing them. Both infantry and cavalry there was, however, a stream bed in between. John drew up facing them, he and his army, and seeing that the men were afraid to cross the stream bed, crossed over first himself. When his men saw this, they too crossed after him. He divided his army into two, with the cavalry in the center and the infantry on either flank, as the opposing cavalry was very numerous. The trumpets rang out. Sindabeus and his army were put to flight, many of them falling mortally wounded, and the rest of them fleeing to the fortress. Then it was that Judas, John's brother, was wounded. But John pursued them until Sindabeus reached Kedron, which he had rebuilt. Their flight took them as far as the towers in the countryside of Azotus, and John burnt these down. The enemy losses amounted to 10,000 men. John returned safely to Judea. Ptolemy, son of Abibos, had been appointed general in command of the plain of Jericho. He owned a great deal of silver and gold, and was the high priest's son-in-law. His ambition was fired. He hoped to make himself master of the whole country, and therefore treacherously began to plot the destruction of Simon and his sons. Simon, who was inspecting the towns up and down the country and attending to their administration, he had come down to Jericho with his sons Mattathias and Judas in the year 172, in the 11th month, the month of Shebat. The son of Abubos, lured them into a small fortress called Doc, which he had built, where he offered them a great banquet, having previously hidden men in the place. When Simon and his sons were drunk, Ptolemy and his men reached for their weapons, rushed on Simon in the banqueting hall, and killed him with his two sons and some of his servants. He thus committed a great act of treachery and rendered evil for good. Ptolemy wrote a report of the affair and sent it to the king, in the expectation of being sent reinforcements and of having the cities and the province made over to him. He also sent people to Gezer to murder John, and sent written orders to the military commanders to come to him, so that they could give them silver and gold and presents. And he also sent others to seize control of Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. But someone had been too quick for him, and had already informed John in Gezer that his father and brothers had perished, adding, "He is sending someone to kill you too." Overcome as John was by the news, he arrested the men who had come to kill him, and put them to death. Being forewarned of their murderous design, the rest of John's acts, the battles he fought, and the exploits he performed, the city walls he built, and all his other achievements, from the day he succeeded his father as high priest, are recorded in the annals of his pontificate. Now, thank you for listening to this segment of the first Maccabees, and that is the end of the first Maccabees. And join me again, and we'll start on the second Maccabees.